A very good morning to all. Hope you all are understanding this poem. And even after that, if you have any problem, you can text me or you can ask me on the phone. Today's topic is Thomas Gray's Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard, and we are talking about the fifth part of this poem. In the previous stanza, the writer was saying that the desire of a man to be remembered after his death finds expression in the inscription of his tomb. In his famous elegy, Gray says that the dying man wants to see his near and dear ones to drop tears for him. After his death also, he naturally wants his memory to be inscribed on his tomb. It is interesting to compare these thoughts with Addison's in Meditations in Westminster Abbey. So let us begin with the next stanza. For thee, who, mindful of the unhonored dead, dost in these lines their artless tale relate, if chance by lonely contemplation led, some kindred spirit shall inquire thy fate. For thee, for the sake of the country gentleman, unmindful of the unhonored dead, without caring for the unhonored dead, the ordinary simple country gentlemen who are lying buried in their graves. Just in these lines their artless tale relate. Artless, simple, which is not artistic enough, which is not ornamented, tells stories of their lives. Relate, to express, to narrate. If chance, if perchance, if by fate, by lonely contemplation, deep thinking alone, by lonely contemplation led, inspired by some solitary thinking on the grave of the poet, some kindred spirit shall inquire thy fate. Some kindred spirit, someone like the poet himself having a contemplative and pensive frame of mind, inquire, try to find out thy fate, the fate of the poet. So here the writer says that he has described in a simple, homely manner the life story of the simple farmers who are lying buried in their graves without achieving honor or fame in their life. For thee, who, unmindful of the unhonored dead, dost in these lines their artless tale relate. If chance by lonely contemplation led, some kindred spirit shall inquire thy fate. He thinks that after death, when he himself too would be buried in his grave, some gentleman of a contemplative frame of mind, who is very much thoughtful, might pass this way and try to find about the life and achievement of the poet who has composed these lines buried in the grave. Next stanza. Haply some hoary-headed swain may say, oft have we seen him at the peep of dawn, brushing with hasty steps the dews away to meet the sun upon the upland lawn. Haply, perchance, or perhaps by chance, some hoary-headed with grey hair, someone who is very much aged, who is very much experienced, swain, countryman or shepherd. Originally the word swain meant a servant. Peep of dawn, just at the time of rising of the sun, dawn time we can say. Brushing, clearing, with hasty steps, going in a quick manner. Upland lawn, the grassy hilltop from which the sunrise could be seen with advantage. So here, in these lines, the poet is referring to his love for nature. He says that after his death, some white-headed shepherd or countryman may say, having a look at his grave, that when the poet was alive, the villagers had seen him at the time of the daybreak, going hastily to the grassy hilltop, brushing the dew in the way. Because it is the dawn time, and during the dawn time what happens is the dew drops are there, and when you are rushing hastily, the dew drops are brushed of the screen, or they are cleared away from the screen. He went there to be able to have a clear view of the sunrise and enjoy the sight of the rising sun. Next stanza. There at the foot of yonder nodding beech that reaches its old fantastic roots so high, his listless length at noontide would be stretched and pour upon the brook that babbles by. There at a distance, yonder, again at a distance, nodding, moving in the wind or moving the head. Beech, a smooth barked gloogy leaved tree. Rats, twists, fantastic, strangely, listless, leisurely spreading his full body. At noontide, during the daytime. Stretch, spread, pour upon, gaze upon, or look attentively at. Babbles by, moves along, making a murmuring sound. So here in these lines, the writer says that there at the foot of yonder nodding beech that reaches its old fantastic roots so high. In these lines, the poet is expressing his love for the beauties of nature. He says that after his death, some countrymen would record the fact that he and other people had seen him or the poet lying at full length under the branch of the distant beech tree at the noontime. The poet used to lie with pleasure under the branches of the beech tree without caring for all that was going around him. The poet cared only for the musical notes of the brook that flowed by the side of the tree. The poet loved the babbling and murmuring sound of the brook. And along with the murmuring sound of the brook, he used to sing something or recite something. Next stanza. Hard by yon wood, now smiling as in scone, muttering his wayward fancies he would rove, now drooping woeful one like one forlorn, or crazed with care, or crossed in hopeless love. Hard by, near or close to, wood, forest. Now smiling as in scone, the wood is unmindful and unscornful of the opinions of the world. The wood recognizes its own worth and superiority over other worldly things. Muttering, speak to himself. Wayward fancies, peculiar poetic thoughts and ideas. The poet repeated his own ideas to himself as he passed by the yonder wood. Rove, to wander about. Drooping, hanging down his head at one side. Woeful one, sad and pale, like one forlorn, like a person who has been deserted by the group to which he belonged, crazed with, maddened with care, anxieties, crossed in hopeless love, one who would not get success in his love affair. Again, in these lines, the poet is reflecting that the countryman would say that he had seen the poet going by the side of the forest, hard by yon wood, now smiling as in scorn. The forest is scornful of the opinions of the world and is conscious of its own worth and superiority. As the poet moved about the forest, he spoke to himself, muttering his wayward fancies he would rove. He spoke to himself in an indistinct way. Poetic thoughts and fancies flashed through his minds. Now drooping, woeful one, like one forlorn. Sometimes the poet would be hanging low, as if under the weight of some anxieties. He would appear like one who had been left alone, or crazed with care, or crossed in hopeless love, who had been left alone by one's fellow man, or who had not achieved success in his love. Next stanza. One morn I missed him on the accustomed hill, along the heath and near his favourite tree. Another came, nor yet beside the rill, nor up the lawn, nor at the wood was he. Missed him, could not see the poet. One morning I missed him I could not see the poet. On the accustomed hill, on the hill at the morning time in order to enjoy the rising of the morning sun in this usual manner, he was not seen on at the accustomed hill. On the hill he was seen every day. Along the heath, heath means flat waste tract of land which is covered with shrubs or favorite tree, the tree of which he was very much fond of. This refers to the beech tree under which he used to lie in the daytime. Another morning came, nor yet beside the rill. On the next day, the poet could not be seen even by the side of his favorite brook, nor at the wood was he, nor he was found in the forest. So here the writer says, the poet imagines that the country gentleman would say that one morning he did not see the poet going on his customary round to the hill from where he used to have the pleasant sight of the rising sun, nor did he find him lying under the beech tree in the noontime. Another morning came, but the poet could not be seen anywhere. Another came, nor yet beside the rill, nor up the lawn, nor at the wood was he. He was neither lying by the side of his favorite brook, nor was he to be seen passing by the side of the wood. No trace of the poet could be found. So here the writer is imagining that what and how the people will react if he is dead and if he is not doing his daily routine as he used to do in the past before his death. Next stanza. The next with dirges due in sad array. Slow through the church way path we saw him borne. Approach and read, for thou canst read the lay graved on the stone beneath yon aged throne. The next day. Dirges, again the funeral songs as the elegy is. Elegy is written on the death of someone, but dirges are sung, the songs which are sung during the funeral. In sad array, funeral processions, when the funeral processions are going on, church way path, the path which is leading from the main road church. Bone carried, approach come. It is an address by the countryman to his fellow person. They lay, the epitaph, the lay, graved on, inscribed, beneath, underneath, aged, old. So, the poet is imagining about himself. The next day, as it was reported that the poet had died, his funeral procession was carried through the churchyard to the place where he was buried. On his grave was raised an epitaph, and the country gentleman asked the farmer who could read to come forward and read the lines on the grave of the poet. So the main poem ends here, and after that the poet has written his own epitaph that he feels will be inscribed on his grave after his death. Thank you all. The remaining part we will talk about in the next class. Till then, I hope you will understand this poem in a far better way. Thank you all.